Hello and welcome back to Thoughts Per Episode Classic Doctor Who Edition. Today is a fantastic day because they've just put all of the currently available classic Doctor Who episodes on iPlayer, minus, of course, the first Doctor episode because someone's a bit of a... Anyway, we've already seen that one. But what's cool is one of the episodes, which I did not do, because if you're confused, I've already done classic Doctor Who from about season 1 up to about halfway through season 2, but I missed out this episode from the end of season 1, which is the Reign of Terror. I say episode, obviously I mean serial, because it wasn't available on BritBox, and I had comments of people telling me, like, you really should find a way to see the animated reconstructed episodes, and that's part of why it wasn't on BritBox, is because a few of the parts of the serial had to be reconstructed through animation. I was like, look, I'm really enjoying exploring classic Doctor Who, but I don't really know if I want to spend the money on the animated episodes. But the good news is, on iPlayer, they're here, all of them. So, or at least all of the ones I've seen. I've flicked through and I've seen some. So I think it's all of them, which means I am now going back to do this one despite getting halfway through season 2. One other thing before we begin, I'm not going to claim that this is going to be a weekly series. I have a lot of trouble sticking to series because of ADHD and wandering interests and stuff. But now that this stuff is on iPlayer instead of behind a paywall, I mean, it's still technically behind a paywall, but you know what I mean. I am far more likely to just have the occasional, like, all right, let's continue working our way through classic Doctor Who, let's go do an episode. And I do now have an official schedule on my channel. It might be a little bit weird to schedules you've seen before, but the general idea is that the Thursday slot, quote-unquote slot, is reserved for thoughts-ons or blurble reasonings and that kind of thing, if I have one available. So look for these on Thursday. Friday! I keep getting that wrong. It's my own damn schedule, I keep getting it wrong. Anyway, that's far more intro than was necessary. Let's get on with things. So after a confusing first few minutes of this episode, I realised that actually the Land of Fear, the first episode in this serial, is missing. It's not been animated, it's not been included in any way, nor has it been explained that it's not here, so it is still slightly less than ideal, but I'm just going to go with it. It kind of feels more like a cold open, and I'm able to just read the plot on Wikipedia instead to make sure I've not missed anything. From what I can gather, basically the first part of his serial is them landing in Paris going, look, we're in Paris, and then immediately getting imprisoned by... It's not entirely clear on the wiki whether it's the counter-revolutionaries or the revolutionaries, but I would assume it's the revolutionaries. Also, heads up, I have no idea what's happening at this point in history. I know it's the French Revolution, that's about all I know. But yeah, it's very strange because A Land of Fear isn't actually listed as one of the missing episodes, so I don't know, maybe there was a copyright dispute or something, or maybe it was just an oopsie. Anyway, part 2! Guests of Madame Guillotine. Well, this episode certainly has an inspired soundtrack, if nothing else. It's a very, I guess, like a mournful dirge. It's just old, really, isn't it? It's just old.
The smell in here. It's terrible. Yes, it reminds me of when we were prisoners before, in the prehistoric age.
One of the three main plot lines in this particular episode is Barbara and Susan stuck in prison, as they often tend to be. Although, to be fair, I think Ian might have racked up more jail time than Barbara or Susan. Susan quickly gives over to despair, saying that, you know, their luck has run dry. There's only so many times they can be lucky and get out of these situations. But Barbara reminds her that it's not always been luck that's gotten them out of these situations, and immediately starts working on a way out. Unfortunately, all this really does is just let rats into their cell, which are like a legitimate concern back in this age because they carry like horrible diseases. I mean, they're still a legitimate concern. I'm not just letting random rats into my house, but you know what I mean. They were like more of a concern because there were less doctors and shit around. I don't know. Also, as a quick note, I find it interesting that Susan may be more afraid of facing a guillotine because I doubt a Time Lord can regenerate after being beheaded. Obviously, regeneration wasn't written to the story at this point, neither were Time Lords, really. but like looking back in terms of canon, I like to think that this might be a reason why she's extra afraid of guillotines. That's if she even knows about regeneration. Who knows? God, that would come as a shock, wouldn't it? Like you're dying and then suddenly you explode and you're a different person. Like if you weren't expecting that, you would be very shocked.
Since my father was taken away, he told me to look after my mother.
Yes. Now you're the head of the house. Yes. Well, Oh, thank you. Thank you for everything. And what's your name?
Jean-Pierre.
I should remember. Yes, Jean-Pierre. Oh, Monsieur Captain.
How's that TARDIS translation matrix treating you, Doctor? You're already speaking French. Anyway, in this episode, the Doctor chances upon some slave labour, and he doesn't like it one bit.
I'm given a schedule. Finish this section by tomorrow, they told me. And if I don't...
It's quite a responsibility.
Well, it'll be finished, even if I have to drive every one of them into the ground.
Yes, I see you believe in drastic measures, eh?
I'll put your backs into it. Look as if you mean it. The sooner it's finished, the better it'll be for all of us.
I'm sure you're very experienced at this job, my man. But as an impartial onlooker, I think I might have a bit of advice to give you.
Well, I'll listen to anything that'll get this job finished quickly.
Well, if you were to expend your energy helping with the road instead of bawling and shouting at them every few seconds, you might be able to get somewhere. Good day to you, sir.
Fucking based. Of course, this doesn't go down too well. The Doctor then gets roped into helping, you know what I mean.
Have you paid your taxes? No? Then perhaps you join the poor wretches and put your energy to better use. Give him a pick.
The Doctor then gets the group to trick the foreman into believing that there's going to be an eclipse so that they can rob him and throw gold coins in the dirt so that they can then pretend that they've dug up treasure so that they can then like whack him with a spade from behind it. In fact, the Doctor does this. He resorts to violence. What I find funny about that though is you had him at the eclipse. You could have just done it then. What's with all this turnabout? For a minute I thought he was using a pickaxe and that he was going to brain the guy, but...
Good day to you, sir. Pleasant dreams.
It's quickly established that the guy is just sleeping. No lasting head trauma, probably. Don't think about it too much, it's fine. Meanwhile, Ian in his prison cell is getting caught up with the whole revolutionary, counter-revolutionary plot. There's some bloke who's English who wants him to get to some other bloke who's English to tell him to take his important information back to England. I'm sure that'll come up in a minute. Part 3, A Change of Identity. Susan and Barbara's trip to the guillotine is interrupted by the heroic feats of some Frenchmen who do not believe that innocence should be given to the guillotine. I actually really enjoy the revolutionaries on screen. It's quite fun to watch. Like, I've seen criticism on the Wikipedia page when I was looking up why the first part is missing. I've seen criticism about how it's not very historically accurate, a lot of this story, but as far as fiction goes, it's pretty fun. Like, the shootout in the square where they were rescuing Susan and Barbara was legitimately quite fun to watch. And then the way they conduct themselves, where they're like, oh shit, someone's at the door, and like they get their guns ready and stuff. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the French revolutionary intrigue. Anyway, my favourite part about this episode is the fact that the Doctor has a maxed out speech skill because he persuades his way through this episode, and it's insane. For instance, when he enters this clothes shop with nothing and exits as a, like, I don't know, but he's in some official position.
Good evening, citizen.
Good evening.
I was just about to close my humble shop, but if I can be of service...
Yes, very likely.
Did you see the executions today, citizen?
No, I didn't.
I missed them, too. Most unusual.
By the way, that's a tiny detail which I just caught in editing. If he had said yes, the guy would have known he was lying, because there were no executions that day, because Barbara and Susan were meant to be the executions that day until they got rescued.
That's very impressive.
Yes, citizen. It signifies the position of regional officer of the provinces.
Yes, I'm quite aware of that. Yes, quite aware. Yes, in fact, it's a post that I myself personally occupy.
I see. I'm sorry, citizen.
Don't apologize. I want to try that on.
Yes, certainly, citizen.
You know the idea that you can just wear a flurry and go anywhere you like because everyone will just assume that you're a workman that's been called into the place that you're fucking... Don't do that, by the way. Probably won't work out, but it's just like the French Revolution era version of that. Still, the absolute gall to just be like, oh, yes, I'm a regional officer of a province's, you know. And then not even to buy it, to be like, of course I don't have any money, but I'll trade you what I'm wearing for it.
Well, it's little better than a fancy dress outfit.
A fancy dress? My dear sir, I doubt if you've seen a coat like it.
I agree.
Am I correct to assume that you're not interested?
You realize there is not much call for a...
Have you had a similar coat like this in your shop?
Never.
Then I can understand why there has been no call.
It is a heavy material, I grant you, and perhaps with a few alterations.
Now, of course, while at the time I was absolutely... my jaw was on the floor at the idea that this tailor just bought this story. I think it's pretty much later revealed that he knows that the Doctor's lying, and he pretty much sends the Inquisition after him, or whatever the hell, the secret police. Or again, I don't know this time period, but he also asks for the Doctor's ring, and then later on the Doctor's ring is shown at the end of this episode as evidence to the fact that he's not who he says he is. So basically the tailor blabbed. What a snitch.
You're offering the entire outfit?
Exactly, of course.
Yes, well, I shall require something else too, like that ring you're wearing, for example.
You may have it, providing you agree to let me have parchment and writing materials into the bargain.
I find that pause very interesting. Clearly the ring is something the Doctor doesn't want to part with. Either that or he's just playing it up because he's trying to, bargain. But I'm leaning more towards the former idea, and it makes me wonder, what does that ring actually signify? Do we know? Is there any information on the first Doctor's ring that he wears? Because he is a granddad. Is it his wedding ring? Or some other symbolic ring from Gallifrey? Or is it just a ring he chose for his outfit and he's using it as a bartering chip?
Who is in charge of this prison? Well, speak up, my man. I am, citizen. My credentials.
Psychic paper would have made this whole ordeal a whole lot easier, wouldn't it? When you think about it, psychic paper and a sonic screwdriver are both tools which would have made this entire episode a whole lot shorter, or this entire serial even, and I have to wonder if they are creations that were made for the show because of how often the show would rely on, like, imprisoning the companions and having the Doctor wear a disguise of some variety and have to fake his way through some area. Obviously, the show then leaned a little bit too heavily on the sonic screwdriver, but it does feel like a direct answer to the way the episodes used to be written. Now, this other citizen, whose name I haven't caught, who's also, by the way, having Ian followed as he escapes prison, that's the third little subplot of this episode that I haven't discussed. I'm pretty sure he knows who the Doctor is, or at least, he knows that the Doctor isn't who he says he is.
It would be a great help if you were on hand to answer any difficult questions that crop up.
A great help. Very well.
I promise you will find it most interesting. Come. We must not keep Citizen Robespierre waiting.
So now as Ian, Barbara and Susan make their way out of danger, or I guess Ian inadvertently leads danger towards Susan and Barbara, the Doctor is now himself falling into danger. Let's see where this goes. Part 4, The Tyrant of France. We last left off on...
Evidence against a traitor.
Quite a lot happens in this episode, and you'll forgive me if I didn't quite keep up with all of it, because first of all, we've swapped to the animated style now, which I'll talk a bit about, and I think it's brilliant, but also I think that while the representations of the characters are faithful, it's also a little bit harder to keep up with who is who with these characters we've just been introduced to than it may have otherwise been. Overall, I do like the animated style. It's very faithful to the look of the original footage. There are some weird, you can tell it's directed a little bit differently, if you know what I mean. There's more cuts, there's more close-ups on eyes and mouths, and, there's more foreshadowing and lighting and framing of, who's potentially hiding secrets. I think it works for the story's favour. It makes you more suspicious of more characters. But I also don't know if it was necessarily the intent to transform or improve it at all in this way. Also, I noticed the audio quality took a hit, which is interesting to me. Obviously, they had the audio, but they didn't have, the full the footage. So clearly there's something about the final footage which has better audio than the audio that they managed to salvage, which is weird. Maybe there was some kind of audio salvaging process in terms of the footage that corrupted the audio slightly. I don't really know, but it took me a minute to adjust to it, but I think it's fine. The original footage doesn't exactly have stellar audio either. Anyway, this episode starts with the Doctor in disguise talking to, oh god, what's he called? Robespierre, and basically heckling him.
I think you have said enough, citizen.
Oh, you do you?
Let him speak, Clement. What he said is true. My enemies do multiply. He is only warning me of the dangers I face. And now, finally, my world is at power. What happens? My colleagues, my trusted friends plot for power.
Do they? Or is it just their wish to keep their heads?
I love how the Doctor just has no time for this bullshit. Early William Hartnell episodes certainly showed a more roughly written Doctor who held less regard for human life, but at this point in the series, it's very apparent that we're seeing the Doctor that we're familiar with.
Your story is that this white-haired old gentleman exchanged clothes and this ring, and that you also gave him writing material.
And the sash, citizen. It was when he took the insignia of a regional officer of the provinces that I became, well, suspicious.
Yes, so you said.
Yeah, I had a feeling that persuasion attempt didn't quite land the way that I maybe thought it had originally. I do love this shit though, the idea of a tailor immediately going and, like, giving this information in as like this paranoid state of everyone's suspicious of everyone. Of course you wouldn't be able to get away with just being like, oh yes, I should be allowed to wear that because I'll have you know that actually I do have that job. Of course he'd fucking report that. He'd be worried about getting beheaded if he didn't, I assume. Again, I know very little about this period in history. Meanwhile, Susan has developed a fever, and this complicates things because they need to get her to a doctor, but most doctors in Paris report any suspicious activity to the authorities. As we see in this episode, this does actually happen. The Doctor susses out that, you know, these calloused hands that Susan has, and this fever she's gotten, and for some reason he manages to piece it together that they are suspicious people. I assume there would have been some kind of news bulletin about escaped prisoners as well, so I did find this little detail interesting.
Although when she hears you're back, that should be tonic enough.
I know it is good news, but I think it's best not to wake her.
Oh, no, I won't. She doesn't sleep for very long anyway.
Now again, I'm probably grasping at straws here. I don't know if the idea of the Doctor and Susan being Time Lords has even really been considered at this point, but it is interesting, this idea that Susan doesn't sleep for that long. It kind of gives the idea that she's, you know, different. Like, I don't know if Time Lords need less sleep than humans. I don't know if that's ever been brought up before, but I'm always on the lookout for, like, hints of future lore being written, and I don't know. I feel like either this was just a passing comment that doesn't mean anything, or it's a hint that Susan isn't human. Now, a quick reminder that I did watch all of these old Classic Who episodes over a year ago at this point, so if I'm misremembering and some kind of other species has already been brought up, my apologies. Also,
I can't stand the thought of having leeches on me.
Suspicion aside, what did they hope to gain from going to a doctor in this time period? Surely they knew from history that they had a very low chance at actually helping their patients. When this doctor is like, oh, leeches will do it, they're like, oh god, leeches, what the heck? And it's like, yeah, they were all about leeches, you should know this. Towards the end of the episode, after they are captured, they take the Doctor, who they know is lying at this point, to question Barbara, and they immediately give themselves away as the citizen dude eavesdrops at the door.
Citizen Lamert thought you might like to question this prisoner.
What's that?
Doctor!
My dear Barbara.
Doctor! Oh!
Yes, certainly seems like they do know each other. Also, Ian keeps blundering around asking everyone if they've seen this English dude whose name I forget, and clearly one of the French people he's talking to is secretly this English dude, and then he gets led somewhere, and then there's guns pulled on him, and I definitely did not catch all the intricacies of this intrigue, I am sorry, but I guess we'll see where it goes from here. Part 5, A Bargain of Necessity. Lots more intrigue happened in this episode, with lots more twisting and turning about of alliances and people, and I definitely followed all of it. There's one scene I really like where they're interrogating Ian because they've realised, oh, he must be a British spy. He must have come over here. And they're trying to figure out how he got here and why he came here. And he says,
I flew here with 3 friends in a small box. When I left England, it was 1963.
And they're just about to start torturing him for this when Julian shows up and saves the day by shooting them all. It's a good thing people keep showing up and saving the day, because otherwise our main cast would be well and truly boned. Meanwhile, the Doctor is continuing his attempts at persuasion and succeeding most of the time. Shortly after, the jailer is threatened with being executed if he dares open the door for Barbara for any reason. He immediately succumbs to the Doctor's persuasion about, if we let Barbara go, then we can follow her and capture all of the traitors. Future Christian jumping in here, I think I misunderstood that, and the order was actually not to let Susan out, but go off. The Doctor then doesn't follow Barbara, obviously, and then tells the jailer off for not following Barbara, which obviously the jailer couldn't do.
I'll leave the prison. Well, why didn't you say that in the first place? Well, did you?
No, citizen.
No, and what do you think the mate will say? He's bound to want to know whose idea it was.
It was mine.
Oh yeah, that's a point as well. The Doctor basically gets the jailer to cook up this plan. It's not his plan, but he kind of like suggests it and makes the jailer think it's his plan.
Citizen, you must help me. I'll try. Now, don't worry. I'll cover up for you. But you know, I have a feeling that this young girl is tied up in this somehow. Now, I think if we let her go, I personally could follow and then arrest all of them. All I need from you is the key to that child's cell.
However, even the Doctor's speechcraft has its limits, and when he suggests pretty much the same fucking plan a second time, it doesn't work.
If this motion gets underway, they will turn against me to save their own necks. Mark my words, Lamet. If this plot is successful, tomorrow, the 27th of July, 1794, will be a date for history.
Okay, 27th of July, 1794. Google. There we go. On July 27th, 1794, Robespierre and a number of his followers were arrested at the Hotel de Ville in Paris. The next day, Robespierre and 21 of his followers were taken to the Place de la Révolution, now the Place de la Concorde, where they were executed by guillotine before a cheering crowd. Honestly, he might as well have just spiked the fucking camera.
We thought you'd been arrested.
Yes, we were. But when we got to the prison, the Doctor was there.
What?
Yes, he's dressed up as if he's running the revolution. From what I could gather, half the people there take orders from him.
That sounds like the Doctor, all right.
The Doctor? You mean Susan's grandfather?
Yes, that's right.
And where's Susan?
Oh, she'll be along later with him. I just walked out.
Walked out? But I don't know how he gets away with it half the time.
Me neither, Ian. Although the key here is that half the time he doesn't actually get away with it, and people are just letting him do it so that they can play him, as we are about to find out. But not before Barbara finds out that the guy she was making gooey eyes with was a traitor who just got shot to death, and gets into an argument with Ian about it.
He's dead, Barbara. I killed him. He was the traitor we were looking for.
It was the only way, Barbara.
He deserved to die. He was a traitor.
What do you mean? He was a traitor.
When I got to the church, he turned on me. He was going to kill me.
He betrayed us, Barbara.
The revolution isn't all bad. Neither are the people who support it. It's changed things for the whole world. And good, honest people gave their lives for that change.
Well, he got what he deserved.
You check your history books, Ian, before you decide what people deserve.
Sadly, I don't know the historical context well enough, I think, to truly enjoy this scene, but I do really like the idea of Doctor's companions falling out about how historical events go and which side people should be on. I think what I'm picking up from this story, this apparently historically inaccurate story, is that while the revolution happened to overthrow a tyrannical monarchy, it also became a tyrannical ruling class in itself. Is that how it went? I'm guessing. And so, people like Robespierre are revolutionaries, but they're not necessarily the good guys at this point in history, obviously, because they've been rounding up innocent people and executing them on paranoia alone. But again, I really do know nothing, so if I'm completely wrong and Doctor Who is just lying to me, I guess let me know. And now the citizen dude whose name I still haven't bloody picked up, finally explains why he hadn't already arrested the Doctor.
Why didn't I? Well, with the political situation as it is and my position being what it is, I need friends. Even if they're enemies, people I can call on for help. If I have something on them, so much the better.
Ah, good old-fashioned blackmail. But part of me thinks he's going to be revealed to be the English spy in the next episode, because he basically blackmails the Doctor into taking him to where Barbara and Ian are, and thereby betraying them and giving them away.
Lemaitre.
Your friend has betrayed us.
And I guess now for the final part, where I'm going to see if my theory is correct.
I am James Sterling.
My theory was correct.
If I can discover the results of this meeting, I'm ready to return to England, and I'm free to help you.
Have you any idea who Barras is meeting?
No, but whoever he is, he could be the next ruler of France.
Spikes the camera. I would just like to take a moment to appreciate Ian Chesterton's attempt at a believable French accent.
Where is Jacques?
Jacques, oh, he's sick. He asked me to help him out. You must be the citizen who ordered the room.
The best part is nobody else is doing a French accent, not even the French people. For context, the episode kind of fast forwards for a part where he and Barbara kind of go undercover, pretending to be innkeepers, but are using that time to spy on that dude who you just heard, as he meets none other than...
It's Napoleon. Napoleon Bonaparte.
Hey, I know that name. I can't believe they got Napoleon in to do a Doctor Who episode. That's wild. Yeah, this final episode is kind of just, we run some errands for Mr. Spy Sterling dude so that he'll give us back Susan and we can leave.
What is it? What you find so amusing?
Oh, I don't know. Yes, I do. It's this feverish activity to try and stop something that we know is going to happen. Robespierre will be guillotined, whatever we do.
I've told you of our position so often.
Yes, I know. You can't influence or change history. I learned that lesson with the Aztecs.
The events will happen just as they're written.
But Doctor, history can be rewritten. Oh, you don't know that yet.
I'm afraid so, and we can't stem the tide. But at least we can stop being carried away with the flood. Now, Susan and the prison.
But don't worry everyone, we have just enough time for one last flexing of the Doctor's persuasive muscles.
Why do you think a high-ranking official like myself came to Paris, I was part of the plan. I came to make sure of Robespierre's downfall.
I didn't know, citizen.
No, you didn't, did you? And that is why you didn't expect me to come back. You thought you'll get away with it.
Get away with what?
Being Lemaitre's accomplice. Take him!
The Doctor levies some incredibly false charges against the jailer, then tells him he'll let him go as long as he can get Susan out. And with all of the political upheaval that is currently happening and all of the confusion about all of the traitors and the switchings of the sides, the jailer, I think, pretty much just lets him have it. He's like, yeah, fuck it, I don't fucking care anymore. That's not what he says, that's not the attitude he gives off, but that's what I'm choosing to believe. Anyway, the Doctor collects Susan, promptly sidesteps the now mutilated not Bonaparte, the other guy, fucking what's his name? I've already forgotten his name, I don't have time to go back and check. Only the most professional content here at youtube.com/@Kritigri. And after a cute little montage of them in a chariot as a map is overlaid on the screen to give the indication of distance being travelled, they return to the safety of the TARDIS.
Yes, Doctor, but suppose we'd written Napoleon a letter telling him, you know, some of the things that were going to happen to him.
Wouldn't have made any difference, Ian. He'd have forgotten it or lost it or thought it was written by a maniac.
I suppose if we tried to kill him with a gun, the bullet would have missed him.
Well, it's hardly fair to speculate, is it? No, I'm afraid you belittle things. Our lives are important, at least to us. And as we see, so we learn.
And what are we going to see and learn next, Doctor?
Well, unlike the old adage, my boy, our destiny is in the stars. So let's go and search for it.
So yeah, the episode ends there with a semi-poignant message about, you know, predestiny, I guess, and how it's rude to speculate on the fate of others and the way history might have gone. I don't know. That didn't really resonate with me, but I like that he was saying that our lives are special. That's nice. Overall, I thought this was a fairly fun adventure. If it was slightly historically inaccurate, it was still interesting to people like me who do not have a grasp on French history. Of course, it did get a little bit tied down in the usual classic Doctor Who shenanigans of, oh no, we're in prison, oh no, they think that we're people that we're not, oh no, now we have to persuade them and side with people that we don't like, etc, etc, etc. But overall, it was a fun time period to explore, and it was nice to have another adventure with Susan because, of course, as I mentioned at the start of this episode, I have actually returned to this episode as I skipped it before, as it wasn't on BritBox in any capacity. But yeah, it was fun to see how the animated reconstruction episodes factored into this serial as well. And I'm looking forward to watching more classic Doctor Who going forward. So if you like this video, please leave it a like. It helps a lot. And subscribe if you would like to see more.